Okay, let's dig into this. Today, we're diving into something, well, incredibly timely, very significant. It's the latest on Ukraine, specifically focusing on Kyiv. And our guide for this deep dive, it's a single source, a very recent CNN article, published just yesterday, July 3rd, 2025. It's titled Kyiv Under Fire, Trump, Putin, and Ukraine's Future. Mm, that date, July 3rd? I mean, that means we're looking at the absolute freshest take possible here. And here's where it gets really interesting, I know. That title alone, it signals some key things, right? Kyiv under fire. Well, that immediately suggests conflict, pressure. Then it links directly to Trump, Putin talks, hints of high-level discussions, and finally points towards the impact on Ukraine's future.
Yeah, and what's fascinating there, I think, is how the source just immediately sets up that trifecta of themes. It's almost saying these three things are completely tangled together. You've got the intense situation in Kiev, and then this critical element of discussions involving Trump and Putin. It really raises a big question, doesn't it? How does the source suggest these high-level talks are intertwined with the realities on the ground, and what does it mean for Ukraine's path forward? The framing suggests a real critical point.
Absolutely. So, for you listening, our mission today is pretty clear. We want to extract what this specific source tells us about these connections, the links between the Kiev situation, the talks, and the implications for Ukraine's future. And just to be clear, we're here to impartially report on what's in this one article, its perspective. So let's start right there with Kiev under fire. What did CNN actually report? What were the significant developments?
Well, the article paints a really stark picture. It highlights a pretty dramatic increase in drone attacks, specifically on Kiev over the last 72 hours. It even details strikes on civilian infrastructure, mentioned the Obolon and Persk districts, and it cites Ukrainian emergency services reporting at least 25 casualties. That includes several fatalities, sadly directly linked to these attacks.
25? Wow.
Yeah. And what's particularly striking, the article emphasizes the precision of these recent strikes. It suggests maybe a shift in targeting strategy. It also notes this renewed sense of public anxiety. They quote one resident saying something like, "We thought the worst was behind us, but it feels like a new phase of terror."
That's a chilling detail, a new phase of terror. Okay, so with that intensifying situation on the ground, let's pivot. Let's look at the Trump-Putin talks aspect. How does CNN connect these discussions to the pressure on Kyiv? What did it actually reveal about, say, the nature of those talks or proposed outcomes?
Right, and this is where the article really seems to break some new ground based on their reporting. CNN reports, and they cite anonymous U.S. and European intelligence officials, that the Trump-Putin discussions included a highly controversial proposal. It was described as a temporary humanitarian ceasefire, but only in specific Kyiv neighborhoods, and crucially, contingent on Ukraine's willingness to start direct, immediate talks with Moscow about territorial status. Wow, okay, so a ceasefire but with major strings attached. Exactly. The article suggests that while it was framed as humanitarian, Kyiv and its allies saw it mostly as an attempt to legitimize Russia's current gains and, put Ukraine in a much weaker negotiating position right from the start. What's also interesting, the article claims Putin reportedly expressed frustration with the slow pace of current diplomacy, like he was pushing for something more decisive.
That's a huge revelation, really significant. So the article isn't just saying talks happened, it's outlining a specific, pretty contentious proposal directly linked to what's happening on the ground in Kyiv. So then, how does CNN tie this all together into Ukraine's future? What are the sort of broader implications the article draws from all this?
Well, the article basically argues that these converging pressures, the escalated attacks and this specific high-stakes diplomatic proposal, are forcing Ukraine into an increasingly precarious position regarding its future. It suggests that if Kyiv accepts any kind of ceasefire tied to negotiations under this kind of duress, it could fundamentally change how the conflict's legitimacy is seen, maybe impact international support. But conversely, rejecting such proposals could maybe lead to, further isolation or even more intense attacks. It's a tough spot.
A real dilemma then.
Yeah. Exactly. The article kind of concludes by suggesting that while the immediate future for Kyiv looks quite grim, the longer-term future for Ukraine really hinges on its ability to navigate this really complex mix, this interplay of military pressure and diplomatic maneuvering. And it implies its allies might also face some difficult choices about their continued support down the line.
Right. So what does this all mean for you? We've taken a pretty concise deep dive here, pulled out the details from this one, a very fresh CNN perspective, looking at the reported pressures on Kyiv, those surprising revelations about the Trump-Putin discussions, and the suggested impact these have on Ukraine's future, all based on this single article.
And if we kind of zoom out, connect this to the bigger picture, it's really a stark reminder, isn't it, of how rapidly these geopolitical narratives can shift, unfold, and how crucial it is to think about the potential impacts of these high-level diplomatic moves on, ongoing conflicts. Which leads to an important question for you, really. How might these specific events reported here, particularly those proposed ceasefire conditions, how might they shape the global landscape and maybe future diplomatic strategies in the, say, coming weeks and months? Something to think about.